Rep. Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Dr. Tate, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing time with this committee. I would certainly appreciate it. I want to shift gears just a little bit and ask a few questions because a lot of things kind of piqued my interest. I think there's been a lot of change at the university in this area over the last year or so. So in January of 2024, a little over a year ago, you sent a message to the LSU community saying that the Office of Inclusion, Civil Rights, and Title IX from that point on would be known as the Division of Engagement, Civil Rights, and Title IX. What spurred that change? Why change the name? Can you elaborate on that for me a little bit?
Yeah, the number one predictor of a student completing an undergraduate degree is engagement. There is no bigger predictor. I guess you could go on income and financial needs, but if you take away all the economic control for economics, the biggest predictor is going to be engagement. And so in the end, the Pentagon, which is a driver for us, our scholarship first agenda, we talk about ag, biomedical science, coastal work, defense, and energy. In the middle of it says student success. Some people often forget that the middle of the Pentagon says student success. So what's the biggest driver of student success? Engagement. How much and how well are students engaged? And we can define that in a lot of ways. I tend to say, did they work with a faculty member? That's why our presidential folks get money to work with a faculty member, because if you're engaged with a faculty member, you're likely to graduate. Another way you get engaged is through internships and the like. And another way you get engaged is study abroad and going abroad with other people. And those are big predictors of whether or not you stay. And so the term inclusive, really, it has some meaning, but if we're an engaged body, by definition, you are part of it. You're included in it. So
everyone's included.
That's right. So foundationally, and this is what I told our faculty, I said, give me another bigger predictor. Some of you are social scientists. Tell me, is there any other bigger predictor? So we should be in the student success business. And engagement is a big predictor of that. And so we've been talking and working with our team on how almost all of our pieces can come together to foundationally deal with this engagement piece, because we think that's going to ultimately lead to greater success.
I appreciate that. So just a few months ago, in October of 2024, the LSU Board of Supervisors passed a resolution instructing the university administration to, quote, undertake a comprehensive review of all programs and bureaucracies, including those titled Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, in which classifications are maintained on the basis of race, sex, color, ethnicity, political views, or national origin. Can you give me an update on how that comprehensive review is coming along? And did that inform the information that the university provided to satisfy Rep. Chenever's Act 641 report from last year?
So, well, first of all, I want to just take a prerequisite. So there's something that happened nationally that I think, or really in a global perspective, that will help you understand what we're dealing with. So there was a change on social media. We went from Twitter to X, right? But how many people still say Twitter?
Oh, I do.
Everybody still says Twitter, right? So once you have a brand, or once you start down a pathway, you can change your name, but there's these remnants, right? So I think what the board did was a wise course, right? So they decided that they wanted us to do, if you will, an examination to determine whether or not they're remnants. So we're now in the midst of that examination, and we're supposed to report.
So you're in the midst of it, but have not completed that comprehensive review.
To the board, this board meeting. Okay. And what I would imagine will happen, I can't speak for them, but what I imagine will happen is there'll be some artifacts they will examine, and they'll have to make a decision about whether or not that meets the spirit in which their proposal or their call asked us to do. And then some things will be, oh, we didn't realize that would be part of this, and we'll have to look at it and be reasonable folks and figure out which one of the items is a problem. And then I think we'll then go back and work with the system to make sure that we have alignment with what they proposed.
Absolutely. So you're saying a lot of the work has been done, I'm assuming, because your university has provided a number, I think 40 pages worth of programs and
that's right
to satisfy Representative Ayers' Act 641 from last year.
I think that predated. So his was first, and then the board came afterwards, and so that was a first pass at it.
Right.
And then there's a second pass, which that information informs the second process. And so just like this transition from, Twitter to X, you have to continually look at your programs and to make sure that they're aligned.
Are you familiar with the report that was submitted to satisfy Representative Ayers'
I did
report?
See it, yes.
Okay. So I have a couple questions regarding it. So one is, if I go to the LSU's website on the Board of Supervisors section, look at their board agendas, the agenda from December 5th of last year, so just a few months ago, is different than the report that was submitted to the legislature. Do you know why that would differ?
No.
Okay. That is very concerning. I know this isn't an agenda item, and I know we'll discuss it in detail for future agendas, but I was concerned when I saw discrepancies between what was submitted to the Board of Supervisors and then what was submitted to the legislature. And if we hadn't known any different, we wouldn't have gone searching for an agenda for the Board of Supervisors. So I was just curious about that. My other question is regarding the report is that there seems to be a number of items that are just missing from the report. As I read the report,
which report are we making reference to?
The Act 641 report that was submitted to the legislature that Representative Ayers passed, asking to give an outline of every DEI program, employee, amount of funding that goes to those, a comprehensive report. It was very long in what was submitted to us, but I didn't seem. If I do a simple search on the course catalog of the university in different departments, I see a number of programs and positions that are listed there on the university's website that were not in the report. I'll give you an example. This is LSU Health Science Center, New Orleans. Department of Medicine, Diversity, and Inclusion. At LSU HSC, we are taking steps to transform the institution into a culture where racial bias and inequity has no place. Diversity among leadership, faculty, staff, and learners enriches the educational experience for all learners and enables us to better address healthcare inequities and cultural competency in clinical care. It goes on to state in another paragraph to demonstrate LSU's commitment to diversity and inclusion as a core institutional value. So there's language like this throughout the university's website that seems to be in conflict with the directive from October from the Board of Supervisors. I'm trying to understand why there are so many components that was submitted to the legislature to satisfy Representative Ayers' report that are missing but are clearly visible on the university's website. I mean, I can go down position by position. Associate Dean of DEI, LSU, HSC. $160,000 a year salary wasn't included in the report. So we see all these news articles where there are saying, the universities in Louisiana only spend $1 million a year total on diversity, equity, inclusion. And in my calculations, just the University of LSU is close to $6 million with salary and benefits in 2 years. I mean, I can go LSU College of Music and Arts, Dean of DEI, wasn't listed. LSU Library of DEI Resource Guide, wasn't listed. Associate AD, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, wasn't listed. Vice President for Inclusion, Civil Rights, and Title IX, wasn't listed. I can go on and on. I've got about 35 positions of people, their salaries from the university. Why were so many things excluded from the report that was submitted to the legislature?
I can't speak to exactly that, and if we want to adjudicate it, I'm happy to sit down and do so. I can tell you that everything is on a time horizon. And as
horizon, but you've had 9 months since Representative Ayers' report was passed through the legislature, and we're missing Has the website and these positions been eliminated and just hasn't been updated on the website?
Oh, that's interesting. Which is the report done by the regents or was it done by us?
Well, you provided information to the Board of Regents for this report.
Well, I would have to see the directives for all of it. I mean, I won't make any excuses. What I will say for you in very clear terms, very clear. We have a very clear directive from our board. Mm-hmm. I operated and executed a plan even prior to their executing their directive, and the expectations is in our system it will be aligned.
I appreciate that. What I'm making sure is how do we know that the university is, one, fulfilling the request of the legislature when there seems to be discrepancies between reports or missing information on reports? Two, how does this body know that the university, a public institution, is not is in alignment with the values and priorities of the state? I think this state would be shocked to know that the university spends millions of dollars a year on diversity, equity, inclusion. Both of you have mentioned a number of times, we want the best and brightest. That is what's driving us. But when you look on your website, in nearly every department, it talks about the health sciences says our number one goal, our core value is removing medical inequities and promoting racial justice. The person that was left off the report was a professor from the University of Kansas who I think would be highly controversial if their name was put out into the public. And I'm wondering, again, there's just a question, was that why that person's name was removed from the report that this body received and it was included in the report given to the Board of Supervisors? Nothing's adding up. And I love the university. I want LSU to prosper and succeed. But when there's all these miscommunications, lack of information, it makes it very difficult for us to have confidence in some of the things that you're telling us.
Oh, that's helpful. Just, by the way, I'm agreeing with everything you say, but I just want to provide a framework. The Act asks for information about everything except for
academic curriculum.
It didn't ask for the curriculum. So in our
academic curriculum.
No,
so you felt like you.
So in our analysis, so that you know, the one we're doing for our board, that is inclusive. So in other words, we're literally looking at that.
And that'll be completed next month.
We're providing some preliminary information to them, and we're going to keep working on it.
When do you expect that we can see a comprehensive report that would address DEI programs at LSU as directed by the Board of Supervisors last October?
The preliminary report will be provided to them at this next board meeting.
Which is?
February. It's next week.
Next week? Can this body see a copy of that report?
Absolutely. It's public information.
Absolutely. Please, I'd love it if you could send that report. And again, I was not coming here with accusations. I'm saying there's a bunch of things that don't line up, don't add up. Missing information, reports varying between different bodies and who's seeing it. And so it just raises a lot of questions and concerns for me. And that's why I'm asking these questions today.
And I take your remarks with all due seriousness. But each request that we get is defined differently. So people are not asking for exactly the same thing every single time. And so if you give a report and one time it satisfies one situation, it may not necessarily satisfy another because the charge was different. Now, I want to be fully transparent. Our job is to provide an outstanding education, merit-based. And I would like to just make one statement. I'm not going to defend the folks in New Orleans for their documents. But there is one thing that I will always defend. When the word health equity or health disparities or any of that is mentioned, it's important for us to understand in that particular frame. There is a lot of research that happens, for example, for women, and I mentioned some of it. Nobody said anything to me about it that deals with certain cancers that women get. That's a health disparity. That's a health equity issue. And so we've got to be very, very specific with our language, because I would never want to run a medical center that was not going to take care of the needs of women. Similarly, there are certain diseases, such as sickle cell anemia and others, that are preponderance of people who get them are people of color. We have to take care of that and the language associated with that. Now, we could quibble about the language. I wish they called it something else that we could all agree on. But there are certain things that happen to certain populations in health, and health individuals have to be attentive to them. Our disparities on cancer, for example, are largely, if we looked at the research, are largely driven by certain racial and or gender characteristics. And if we ignore it, we won't solve our cancer problem in Louisiana. And I'm just saying that with respect. But you and I are in agreement.
I agree. There are certainly differences when you're talking about specific types of cancer, and I don't think this body has any issue with that. You're absolutely right. We need to make sure that we are addressing those types of cancers, for example, that might be gender specific or things like that. But as you know, for some people, the term diversity, equity, inclusion can mean what you just said, or it can mean a whole lot more.
I agree with you.
And that's what this body is trying to understand. And when things are very unclear or lacking comprehensive nature in the reporting, it makes it very difficult for this body to ascertain that information. And that's why I'm asking. So thank you very much. I certainly look forward to seeing that comprehensive report.
Thank you, Rep. Carlson. President Tate, since we're talking about this agency with Title IX, could we have, I know, isn't there someone from Title IX? Could they come and speak? Because I know, obviously, it's been in the paper a good bit. If you could sort of